name is Sharon DuBois, and I'm the Grants Administrator for the City of Gloucester. I came here in August of 2009, and I was hired to administer a federal and state grant programs, but I was also, because I have a strength in economic development, I was also given additional duties besides the regular role of being a grants administrator. So I administer this community block development grant program, the housing and urban development, and also the Environmental Protection Agency Brownfields grant program. But additionally, additional duties for me are also to come up with economic development suggestions and to work as part of a team.
Great. So what projects are you really excited about? You mentioned CDBG and the Brownfields.
Yeah.
And maybe even regarding Brownfields, could you explain maybe a little bit what those properties are? And
Sure.
That's so recent.
Yeah. And Brownfields, the great news about Brownfields is that they are actually part of economic development for towns and cities. And the reason that they are is we're taking sites that are underutilized. They might be polluted, they might be just abandoned, whatever it is, or they're not being properly utilized. And instead of taking and tearing down more green space, we can take a look at these and start revitalizing these areas. And what it also does is it revitalizes neighborhoods. What starts to happen is if you have, for instance, in another municipality I used to work in, we had giant mills that were empty or they were just used for storage. And then what happened is some investors came in and we worked with engineers to figure out how to solve the issues, the environmental issues that were there through remediation. And what ended up happening was it has revitalized. There were 4 mill properties near each other that were empty except for boxes and a few other things by walking around. And they ended up, there's now over 3,000 employees working in these 4 mill properties because private companies have moved into this area that was completely revitalized. So brownfields are a very, very important piece of the economic development for a municipality.
Wow, certainly.
Yep.
And what is that? Would that include the paint factory and places like that?
The paint factory could be one of those, absolutely. What the paint factory is though it's a little bit a ways from the actual downtown area. It's a little more remote to get to. What that does is that can increase, for the visitor-based economy, that can actually start to attract more people here because that's going to be an educational and research institute for whale studies internationally. And I just think just the curiosity factor of people will be able to bring their families and go there. Scientists from around the world will be able to come in. When she isn't out doing research, the research vessel, the Odyssey, will be over there. And it just adds more to the list of things that attract people to come to Gloucester.
That's great. That's a huge supplement to the, the whale watches and everything downtown. To have a real research facility is really great.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's Brownfields. How about some other projects that you have going on?
Sure. Well, I actually made a list before you came over of some of the different things, and I think one of the most important things is for people in economic development, I think, is to be making sure that your outreach, I'm hesitating with saying the word networking because it's such a cliche, but I really do think networking is so important. Some of the things that I've been doing in my role in the almost 1 year that I've been here is I make sure that I'm getting people to come to Gloucester and that I'm going over the bridge and making sure I'm still keeping connections over there and just really kind of mixing that up. Let me give you an example. HUD just came out with a brand new economic development toolkit. They haven't had this revitalized in over 10 years. And I saw an opportunity to have people come up and see Gloucester as a place where something new is forthcoming. So I called the economic development specialist for HUD in Boston, who I happen to know, and I asked Cedric if he would be willing to have a training seminar here in Gloucester for all of the north of Boston community block development grant recipients for the different municipalities. And so we're looking at setting this up for the late fall, and we're going to have probably about 30 different recipients that come up to this area, and he's going to be rolling out a brand new economic development toolkit. But it positions Gloucester as somebody that's also staying, very hip and knows what's going on.
Right, very happening and getting people together and cooperation and being proactive. That's great.
And then there's also we were talking about communications earlier, and you and I are both graduate school type people for communications. So there's looking at what kind of resources do we have here in the city. There's the Economic Development Corporation, EDIC, that's here. And they do outreach and marketing for like where the warehouses and such are, making sure that those are filled up. So I make sure that the person who's here Alan Hagstrom, who's here. I make sure that I communicate with him on a fairly regular basis. I'll walk down to his office, ask him what's going on. I'll have read something in the paper about a company I don't know. He has some information he gives to me, and then I just have more general information in case I need it for something. There's also one of the other things that the city helps to fund is a nonprofit organization called Cape Ann Business Incubator, CABI. And they fill a very, very unique niche here in Gloucester. And what they do is they work with people that want, like if you wanted to start a small business of your own, and you weren't quite sure how to write a business plan or how to get started or what do you need or what are the resources, that's a niche that they filled for us. And that is a great resource for us because it takes a lot of time to be able to help people to get that together. They also can work with the local banks. They know about spaces here in the city, just a lot of general information for somebody who might be looking for incubator space, or maybe they've got a few employees and they're trying to figure out what they want to do here in Gloucester. So that's another important piece. We also discussed a couple minutes ago a brand new economic development program we have here. It's a loan program called the Maritime Development Fund. And your mom and I actually worked on that together. And that's where I developed an application, and I also developed a scope so that people would understand if they might be eligible to apply for this or not. And what it really is it's up to $50,000. If they're approved in the application, they have to have job creation, and there's a $50,000 cap on it. So it's probably for like 1.5 jobs, because I've got some federal regulations that I won't bore you with all the details about, but that I have to follow. And as long as it involves some job creation, and the company looks eligible, and they've got a good business plan, if they need a little bit of extra funding, we can give them a very, very low interest loan, either to add more space and employees to their business, or if they're a new business coming in. And it's kind of like the icing on the cake, because a lot of what we don't have here in Gloucester is we don't have a lot of tax credits to give to people. So we need a little bit of an incentive to draw people to come to Gloucester, since we're at the end of 128, and to think about why would companies want to come to Gloucester. So if we have some different business deals we can put together that make it a little more attractive for folks, we find the right space for them, we have the right permitting processes in place, we're very responsive when people email us or call us that we're getting back to them, we show them that we're very interested in having them here. This is like a little bit more of an incentive for them to consider coming out to Gloucester.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Have you seen that be effective? Have you been able to award it yet?
Well, we have, for instance, and it's very native to this area, we have a gentleman who's been in the area for quite some time, and he's in the shrimp business, and he wants to have a shrimp processing plant here. So he's going to need a lot more money than that $50,000, but we can be part of the mix. Right now he's working with a company, it's a quasi-state, state-private organization called Mass Development. And he's working with them, and they're getting a study together for him, and also some of the local politicians have been involved. So we're going to be able to put some money in towards this, provided all goes well. But so anyway, yes, it's a very, very helpful. So it's brand new, and we're still learning how to reach out to people and tell them about it, and to attract the right kind of businesses is very, very key.
Right. Well, when you are at the end of the line, you do tend to need some sort of incentive, and it's nice to have something to offer.
Yeah, and also the city, you might know about this, we worked with a group called Mount Auburn Associates out of Boston, and they did a marketing study for us. And they're putting some finishing touches on that, but they identified 3 economic development industries we need to look at. It's the maritime industry, it is the fishing industry, and it's also the visitor-based economy. So those are the 3 areas that we're focusing on for economic development for the city of Gloucester.
I was reading about that. Those sounded like 3 good target areas for Gloucester.
Makes sense,
for sure.
doesn't it? Yeah, exactly.